Mobile hunters, the king of comfort has arrived. Go to tetherednation.com and check out the new Lockdown saddle. Over the past 2 years, Tethered has tested and refined a new approach to their saddle lineup. The Lockdown saddle takes the best-in-class features from the Phantom, like the UtiliBridge, comfort channels, and included an expandable saddle body with their Lockdown link construction to take saddle hunting to the next level of comfort. As if this wasn't enough, they developed Lockdown haulers, which has a slightly rigid internal frame structure, so you can easily unzip, zip, and access haulers with one hand. And if you're a guy like me with no junk in your trunk and have issues with your saddle staying put while you're walking in to hunt, the Lockdown modular yoke solves this problem. Whether you're new to saddle hunting or an old tree climbing veteran, go to tetherednation.com for all your saddle hunting gear. Welcome to the Truth from a Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you're listening to episode number 348. Today, I'm joined by my buddy, Chad Sylvester, to go over our goals, hopes, and dreams for this fall. So stay tuned. All right. What is up, everyone? Happy Wednesday to you. Hope you are doing well. Hope you are feeling fine. I got to say, man, I'm kind of stoked because I'm feeling way better today than I have in weeks. I think I was lamenting my shoulder issue that I was having. And, one would say maybe you go to a doctor or something like that. But no, I went back home for a family celebration. It was the in-laws' 50th wedding anniversary. That wasn't what cured it. What ended up curing it was my brother-in-law. He's been into like the fitness for, way before fitness was cool. He's been one of those guys who's been like a gym rat and studying his own body and stuff like that for, I don't even know how long now, probably going on 20 years probably, or close to that, at least 15. And he's a nerd about that. So kind of how I'm a nerd with bow hunting, or I'm a nerd with jiu-jitsu. He's a nerd with like all things related to like muscles and how they work together and stuff like that. And he also started doing jiu-jitsu. And so we were supposed to train together this past weekend whenever I went back home, and I couldn't because my shoulders have been jacked up, and it's the shoulder that I've had, torn ligaments. It's just, it has problems. And so I was worried that I maybe had damaged it some more. And I kind of felt like it might be muscular more so than anything, just based on, the type of discomfort I was having. And so, I texted him the day before I was coming in and was just saying, hey, man, we're probably not going to be able to roll, this weekend because my shoulder's just jacked up, and I went to jiu-jitsu and it just isn't doing well. And I need to be able to shoot a bow here. Like I gave myself the deadline. Like I got to try to have this thing figured out by next week because they give me like a month for before my opener comes. And I was shooting previously, but I've taken probably close to like a month off just because my shoulder's been banged up. And so I get back home, and he's like, hey, man, I was doing some research and was trying to figure out what muscles you might be having a problem with. He's like, I think I figured it out. And so, didn't go to a doctor or anything. I laid on the floor and let him take a rolling pin to my lat, my trap, and then he dug in underneath my scapula and like worked the muscles underneath that with like his hands. And essentially those muscles were just like completely in knots, and my scapula was frozen. And he manipulated it to the point to where I could move my arm again. I had a little bit of discomfort still, but I think it was just because the muscles were so jacked up. And I woke up this morning and I was able to completely move my arm, and like it's felt better than it's felt in like a month. So, I'm not condoning, maybe that you go to your unlicensed family member for your medical attention. But, every now and then a little redneck ingenuity, or let your brother-in-law beat up on you a little bit, ends up fixing whatever's ailing you. I don't recommend it, but in this case, it worked like a charm. So I think I might actually be able to shoot my bow this weekend. I'm giving it a couple more days to rest and feel better, and then I'll start flinging some arrows. So I am super stoked for that because I was really kind of down in the dumps, thinking that I was going to have to, I was going to be on the struggle bus. Was shooting my bow. But regardless, we had a great celebration back home this weekend, and I'm now kind of pointing sharply toward kind of getting ready for archery season. But with that, I have a cool show for you guys today. We're going to jump into it here in a second, but I just want to make quick mention. If in the past two podcasts, if you didn't hear, I'm doing a giveaway. Sitka's been super rad, and they're going to give me a Stratus kit to basically give away, like a set of pants and a jacket or a vest if you prefer a vest. Stratus is the kit that I wear pretty much once the weather starts to dip, get a little bit chilly. I wear Stratus basically from that point of like, just say early October when you start to have some cool evenings, or colder evenings and colder mornings. And I wear that basically all the way through late season. And I just changed my layering system underneath of it. And that kit basically gets me all the way through the season. So in order to get included in the giveaway, if you haven't already done so, you're going to want to head to iTunes and leave a rating and leave a comment. And within that comment in iTunes, you're going to want to put your Instagram handle so I can find you if you win and get your contact information, et cetera, et cetera. So that enters you into the running. If you want additional entrance into the running, if you don't follow me on Instagram already, you can follow Truth from the Stand on Instagram. That'll get you a second entrance. And if you don't already subscribe to the YouTube channel, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, and that will get you a third entrance. But the de facto is you have to leave a comment and a rating. Hopefully it's 5 stars if you like the show on iTunes, and that'll be the primary way to get into the running to win the Stratus kit. So with that, we're going to go ahead and just jump into today's show. Have a cool show for you guys today. Have my buddy Chad Sylvester on. You guys know Chad. You love him. He is the co-owner, founder of Exodus Outdoor Gear. I've been working with those guys forever, but more importantly, Chad has been one of my best buddies basically since we met, whatever it was, seven-ish years ago, I think at this point now. We usually try to do some hunts together every year. Hasn't panned out just because, when he was drawing Iowa and things like that kind of has thrown a little bit of a monkey wrench into our travel plans. And this year he's headed back out to Idaho again, which I was supposed to go, and I was a lazy ass and didn't get my tag. And now I'm really kind of kicking myself. But he's headed back out to Idaho, which is going to eat up a ton of his time. He's got some family obligations in the fall around the time that I'll be in Kansas. So we won't be traveling together again this year, but hopefully next year we'll get that righted. Unless I end up killing early, then I may end up paying him a visit in Ohio on my way back through from Kansas. So we will see. But essentially, this is the annual episode that he and I do together that we'd like to do, where we go through our hopes, dreams, aspirations, things that we would like to see come to fruition this fall. As always, we have very modest kind of expectations. They're kind of rooted in realism, if you will, or a pragmatic approach to what we would like to happen or what we think could happen. And then, of course, we're not gonna look a gift horse in the mouth if something of amazing caliber or amazing experience kind of happens to fall in our lap. We'll be grateful and accept it. So with that, we're gonna go ahead and just jump into today's show. As always, thank you all for listening. All right, folks, we're back with another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. And today I got on my brother from another mother. You know him, you love him, Mr. Chad, by God, Rodeo Sylvester. What's going on, man?
Not too much, Clint. How are you, brother?
I'm doing good, man. It's good to see your smiling face, dude. I haven't seen it in a while. It's been since probably Harrisburg since I seen you in the flesh.
I think you're right. I think it's been about 6-7 months, man. Yeah, good to catch up with you, man.
Yeah, I know. What have you been up to, dude? What's new and exciting in your world?
Nothing new. Same kind of, I don't know, same grind, I guess.
Same grind,
getting pulled in a million different directions. Life's kind of changing a little bit for me with the kids getting a little older and wanting to be more involved in the sports and all that stuff, So, which is good.
Yeah, you're a coach now, right?
Oh, a couple times over.
Yeah. What are you coaching right now? Is it basketball?
On things I should not be coaching.
Nice. Is it coaching basketball or soccer right now?
Yeah, no. Luckily, I did not have to coach soccer this year. I'm the guy that has always thought soccer is like the one communist sport in the world. And the only time I've ever watched soccer is probably like one World Cup game ever in my entire life. But was forced to coach last year. So luckily I don't have to coach soccer this year. But I did give the nod to coach a couple basketball teams, one on my daughter's side and then one on my son's side. So luckily that does not start for a couple months yet.
Right. So what is your basketball background?
None, baby.
Is it gonna be like the like just go tackle them? Like is it gonna be more like your team's gonna be playing more like murder ball? Is that what the plan is?
Well, that's how I taught my son to play soccer, and it has not worked out very well. It's just like
nice.
He gets these cards, right? They're different colors and they mean different things. I don't know. I just tell him just keep doing your thing, man. Don't slow down.
Right. He comes home and he's like, "Look at all these color cards I got, Dad." Like, I won.
Basically, yeah.
He's a chip off the old block, man. That's for sure. That's how I imagine you, whatever you were when you were his age. For sure.
He's the same. Actually, he just trapped his first coon this morning, so he was all pumped up about that. It's been like a World War III at our residence trying to get this damn coon population under control. So he trapped us. He made a dog-proof set last night, caught one this morning, so he was all pumped up. And I told him after he got his first one, we'd make him a old Daniel Boone raccoon tail hat. So he's all fired up about that.
Dude, that is awesome. And so did you do any trapping when you were growing up, or is that?
No.
Okay.
I did not do any trapping growing up. It's just something a handful of years ago. I'm not sure if you've ever met or talked to Jesse Tumpack. He's a local guy here.
I've talked to him. You introduced me to him a couple years ago, and I haven't talked to him in several years, but we used to text quite a bit.
Yeah, so he does a lot of trapping with his daughter. I mean, he's pretty big into the fur-bearing side of things. So anyways, he's taken me out a couple of times, and a handful of years ago, I went out and bought some dog-proof coon traps and some are 4-coil traps and some conibears, and I don't do much with them, but the kids think it's really cool. So it's another opportunity to get them outside and show them something outside of deer hunting that's maybe not so serious.
Right, so daunting to kind of get into. They can kind of play around with it. Success, failure, doesn't matter. Or it's just the varmint didn't show up that day. You know what I mean? I guess there's a lot to do with like how you set it up, but at that age, it's more so about the thing just didn't show up, as opposed to like you didn't do something right. Yeah,
it gives them an opportunity to look at tracks and just grow a very small or starting foundation of like woodsmanship and different things. And it's an opportunity for us to spend time outside, which is really why, I'm doing it. But yeah, it's good. Yeah.
It's funny because, like, I don't know about you, but all the different guys that I've had on the show to interview for the podcast, there's like, if there was like, I've always said like one of the main red threads that I've seen with all the killers is that like their attention to detail, but beyond their attention to detail is like their curiosity, where it's like anyone who's talking about deer hunting, they're listening and they're dissecting it, even if it's a guy who's only been hunting for 3 years, because they're always looking for that one little thing that they either surpassed and don't think about much anymore, right, consciously, or something new that someone else has kind of unlocked because they're so brand new to it. They're just looking at things completely differently than they are as a veteran, right? Yeah. That's the one thing. The other thing always was either trapping or running dogs was the other thing that I've always kind of noticed. Like whenever I talked to, I forget it, Justin Hollinsworth. Like he ran dogs and ran coon dogs for forever. You know what I mean? And I know my buddy Todd, he did a lot of trapping and stuff like that, and I just kind of feel like those guys have like an extra sense of like the woods and woodsmanship just in general about how they read it, and how animals are going to want to use it. And I've always kind of made that connection of like, man, if someone's trapping and stuff like that, like they're usually a slayer, and what I've kind of found out.
Yep. It just gives you another opportunity to, look at the big picture, like you said, like how different animals use different things. And by no means am I an expert at all, because I'm terrible at it. Like
dude, you trapped one coon last night, dude. I pretty much think you're an expert now. I mean, if your coaching background suggests anything, it's like you don't have to do it and you're a coach, So yeah. I think you're good. You'll probably be teaching a trapping course, have an e-course next week.
Hey, it's not a bad idea, man. I've seen worse things on the internet.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, so this is our annual Chad and I get together and talk about our upcoming season, what we have going on. Unfortunately, this year, it's going to be 2 years in a row, man. We're not going to get to hunt together this year.
It is 2 years in a row. I've dialed it way back this year for the most part. But yeah, at some point next year, the Iowa thing and the Kansas thing kind of have us screwed up
mixed
a little bit. Yeah.
But I think the good news is, good or bad news, it depends on how you look at it, is I doubt I'll be able to draw Iowa next year. Just because just because of point creep. Like
Point creep. Yeah.
I'll have 4 next year, but like I know some people have drawn with 4 like this year, but a lot of people, most everyone had to have at least 5 to get it.
Yep.
So especially the area that I want to hunt, and so I'm guessing I'm probably not going to get to go to Iowa next year. I mean, I'll probably still put in for the tag and see if I get it. And if I get it, great. If not, then, make plan B, we'll figure out somewhere to go or whatever the case is. But next year might be the year where we get the band back together finally and go somewhere.
Man, we got to get you a Western elk tag, brother.
I know, dude. I was kicking myself. I actually even said it on the podcast the other day. I was like, because you texted me, you're like, hey, you want to put in with the group? And I was like, nah. I was like, I'm going to skip this year, because I went last year or whatever. And now all of a sudden I'm seeing all my buddies get ready. I've been watching elk videos. I had my cow call out like the other night. I was going like looking at all like my backcountry gear and stuff. And I got sad, about it. And I was like, damn it, man. I was like, I should be going with Chad this year. And part of it was like, I think last year I was just so burnt at the end of the season when it was time to put in. Like my battery wasn't recharged and even ready to think about hunting season yet. And so when it came around to like pick up an elk tag or even put in to go elk hunting, other than like getting my points for future years, I was just kind of like, man, I'm just glad hunting season's over. I don't even want to think about it. I'm done. Like I'm good, And so, and that tag is one that happens early. Like you got to put in early for that. Or
that
like
is
it
an early
happens
tag.
early in the, yeah. And so I just wasn't mentally there yet. But now I'm kicking myself because I'm like looking at my buddies. Like I'm looking at some of my photos from last year, from being out there. And I'm like, damn it, man, I want to be back out there.
Well, the good thing is like with both of us using kind of the same point strategy and hunt plan for the next decade. I'm going to call it a decade. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we have planned that should come to fruition. Maybe not in 2024, but 2025 and beyond for sure.
Should definitely be 25 and beyond, I would say. I was actually thinking of giving them, shooting them a message and seeing like where the points are at for certain areas, just so I can start to get an idea of like, okay, where's the first place that we might be able to go, for what species, just to kind of start thinking about it. But with that, man, that's a perfect kind of transition, man. I know you're headed back to Idaho. You killed last year in Idaho. So how's the prep going? Where are you at on like a scale of like 1 to 10 for like excitement of being ready to go?
Scale of 1 to 10 on excitement, I am at a 9. Like I am jazzed up, brother. One of the guys that also is in our group was out there. Actually, he was in Utah. He went to the TAC in Utah, but made a short detour to stop, throw some cameras up, take a look at what was going on. And it was like just a 2 or 3 day trip, so it didn't cover a bunch of ground. But he threw some cell cameras up, and just like there's so many elk in that unit, and it's like just seeing where they're at, knowing that they've had the winter was relatively bad there, but they had a really wet spring. We're hunting lower elevation, so it wasn't the die off or the winter kill wasn't as dramatic as some of the other stuff going on in some of those western states. So it's shaping up to be a freaking really, really, really good hunt. So my excitement level's through the roof right now.
Right.
Yeah.
What elevation are you guys at, like when for your hunts out there?
I think the highest we were last year was somewhere around 9,000. There's some spots, some peaks in there, and a couple ranges that are above 9, but I don't think there's anything above 9,800. And for example, where I killed last year was around 76. So there's a lot of hunting between 6,800 and I'll say 8,500.
Right. Okay. Yeah. It seems very similar to where I was at in Montana the one year. Like, because it's actually probably not far away, because I was in southwestern Montana in the corner, actually near the Idaho border, is where I was at, and that was like typically, I think our base camp was at 83 or something like that, is like kind of like where we camped, and then we would drop down into canyons or whatever the case was, and there was a couple peaks, and I think the highest elevation we were at was like, there was one peak I want to say was like maybe around 11, like, but that was like the highest like peak in like that particular area, but most of the stuff was right around like what you're kind of talking about, it was like 95, maybe 10, 98, whatever the case is. Yeah, it's nice when you have areas to glass. I'll say that. You know what I mean? And that was kind of the nice setup for that year. Whenever I was out there, we had a lot of glassing opportunity. Last year for me, not so much, just based on where I was at. It was actually a lot of hunting elk like you hunt whitetail. To be honest, which is I don't recommend for anyone who's not a skilled, who's not like a veteran elk hunter.
Yeah, I've been on some good hunts and I've been on some really, really, really bad hunts. And to me, the advantage of hunting a little more mild terrain, even though that I'm in good shape and I train for this and I'm rucking with 80 pounds on my back and all of that stuff. But the terrain is a difference maker when you're on extended hunts. Like when you're beyond 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 days, like the terrain does make a difference. It will wear you out. I don't care who you are, Cameron Haynes, whoever. It's an equalizer. But then two, being able to hunt broken ground and utilize glass, man, just having a visual on animals, it does something about the morale and the spirit of the guys that you're hunting with. And when you know that, I've located game and you can kind of strategically put a plan together to execute against, and maybe that plan turns out as a total failure. But I think that you learn so much more in those scenarios versus hunting those very, very, the dark timber, the dense stuff, the stuff where you can't see, you can't hear anything. Opportunities and learning opportunities are far and fewer in between in that type of hunt.
Right. What was your biggest takeaway from last year that you'll apply this year?
That you don't need to be a great elk caller to go kill elk. Right. I think when you dive into like the media side of it, any hunting, right? Like there's certain agendas that are pushed in media, and I think as content creators, you and I, like we're guilty of that sometimes in the whitetail space. But when you dive into the elk wormholes, everyone thinks that you need to be a great caller and you need to sneak into their bedding areas and rip bugles and have that bull come rushing in and screaming his head off. And it paints a certain picture on the tactic or strategy that you have to use. And you can kill elk in transition. Now, I'm not saying it's maybe the best thing to do, but I had multiple opportunities in spotting elk in transition coming from food, working their way back to bed. And I know I blew a couple of them, but ultimately killed on one of them too. So right. I think that's the biggest thing is, not being overly aggressive and hunting them with a partner can pay dividends. And not that you need to be right up in their face, but if that bull is still vocal with someone a couple 100 yards away, he's telling you where he is. Like leave somebody back there, giving some location bugles, just keeping that bull audible. And then like the guy that's on the hunt that day, like go in and get him killed.
Right.
But I would say those are the two biggest things.
Right. Is there anything you're going to do different this year than you did last year? Is there anything like when just like, cause those were two things where you're like, so these are things that I learned. And now is there anything, that you look back on it and you're like, man, I'm going to do this completely different, than I did in years past?
Not necessarily from last year. I don't think,
not wreck the motorcycle.
Don't wreck the motor. Don't wreck dirt bike. But I'll dial that back to 2 years ago where I felt like it was more of a backcountry type hunt. And we wanted to, did a bunch of digital scouting and wanted to commit to going 8 miles deep and setting up bivvy camp and hunting from bivvy camp. And what we learned was it's a hell of a lot of work to go do that. And if you're not in the elk, a lot of times you're walking back towards, the trailhead or back towards the truck or whatever, and you're essentially hunting your way back. So I think one of the things I learned 2 years ago that was that we implemented last year was just staying more mobile. And that sounds weird, like coming from a whitetail guy going west to hunt. You think that like we would have that mentality already, but like it's, you paint these pictures or expectations for a hunt to have a backcountry experience, and like sometimes it just does not work out that way.
Yeah, well, I think there's we romanticize that kind of western backcountry, in the wilderness, in the middle of nowhere, in a tent, for gonna rough it and live off the land for 3 weeks, 2 weeks, a week, however long you're going to be out there, right? when at the end of the day, like, you're there to try to fill your tag. I mean, yeah, you want to have the experience, right? But the reason why you went there is because you have a tag. Otherwise, you just would have went there to go like sightsee with your family, and you become guilty of, the romantic part of the hunt as opposed to the hunt itself, right? And I just feel like in general, most hunting, I feel like being mobile is to your advantage, right? Because the animals you're chasing are mobile. It's like if they don't like something in one spot, whether it's they caught a whiff of a human or they have a predator that kind of ran through there, or the food has changed or whatever, dude, they're gone. They're off to they're into the next thing. You know what I mean? And especially with elk, it's like once you find them, don't leave them. And so if they're moving, move with them. Just like keep following the herd. Make sure you keep them located and don't get busted, don't get greedy. But you don't want to let them get too far away from you, because man, when they decide to move, like they move. Like it's amazing, like how much ground they cover and how quickly they cover it.
Yeah. That brings up a point. Like last year, there were a couple times in the mornings where we had glassed small herds. There's maybe one bull and a handful of cows, and we watched them go into some dark timber, and they're moving. And that starts from sun up to like 8:30, 9 o'clock. So we glassed them for a good ways and watched them go maybe a mile across a ridge side, and they go into a relatively large block of timber, and it's like I can remember thinking, that's where they're going to bed. Like they walked into that big timber. It made sense with the way the wind was blowing, and we went up in there, and they weren't there. So we did all of this work to that was a relatively hard climb. I think we climbed 1,300 feet in like less than half a mile. I mean, it was almost straight up. Damn. But yeah. we get up in there, and the elk aren't there. And then it's like now we're cutting tracks to figure out where they actually went. And we ended up blowing them out of a bedding area that was about a half a mile around that ridge side or around that point. And that is actually a takeaway that we will implement this year is it takes those animals longer than what you think to get back into those bedding areas. It's not like sun's up, boom, they're laying down wherever they are. Like they're going miles a lot of times. And in fact, the bull that I killed, he was down in a private alfalfa field at daybreak and went 4 miles back into a drainage with his herd or heirloom or whatever before they actually bedded down. I killed that one in its bedding area, but
right,
yeah, that would be one thing that we learned last year that we'll implement this year.
Right, that's crazy, man. Because I mean, especially as an eastern hunter, we know that yes, a mature deer might spend a little bit more time getting to where he wants to go, than we might think, but it's not a whole lot more time. You know what I mean? It's not like, whenever it gets to be gray light, like he's pretty close to where he wants to be. You know what I mean? And he might have a little extended area, or he might have an area he wants, like a transition area between it. He might want to munch some food on his way there, and he might spend a little bit of extra time or whatever. But we're not talking like when gray light hits, like he's moving another mile. Like when gray light hits, we're talking like less than hundreds. Like I would say it's probably close to like 100, maybe 200, you know what I mean? The yards that he might be from, like where he wants to bed down, And when that happens, it's like, they usually are like, oh shit, I'm going where I need to go, right? It's like, I'm just beelining it to where I want to be, Where when you transition, you go out west and it's like, yeah, they hit this dark timber and you're like, oh, they're going to go in there and lay down. It's like, nah, they're going to wrap around that ridge. They're going to, and going to stay in the timber for another 2.5 miles, just use the timber now to get where they want to go, and then bed down. And so, yeah, it's, there's another 2 hours before they're actually going to bed.
Yep.
Which is kind of wild. So what's your standard for the trip, man? Like, so last year you killed, what's, you killed a bull, you packed it out, did it in your underwear, which I always like to remind you of that. So what's your standard for this year? What's your goal? Like, is it still like, are you still in that place? Cause I know you love elk hunting. Are you still in that place where it's like, dude, I'm going to kill any legal, bull I see, cause I'm just jazzed up to be elk hunting? Or because you scratched that itch now once at least, are you, looking at it more like, okay, yeah, I'm not gonna try to kill the top end bull, but I'm looking to move beyond what I did last year.
Yeah, I would like to move beyond what I did last year, but I would still there's 4 of us in camp, and I want everyone to have a good hunt, not just for myself, but just to be a part of the group success. So I will shoot the first legal bull that I get a crack at. Yeah, I mean, I knowing from last year that I had 2 opportunities before I killed, both on bigger bulls, but still screwed them up. One was inside 20 yards. That it's not just guaranteed. It's still, even though it's a good unit, it's not, you have those encounters, those opportunities. Success is not guaranteed. So I'm going to take every opportunity that I can get and just be opportunistic about the hunt. The only thing I will say is, if I'm 8 miles deep and I know that there's a heck of a hard pack out coming, maybe I have second thoughts about what I'm squeezing the trigger on. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That was because that was I mean, you were fortunate you ran across some cowboys that gave you a hand and stuff like that. But that was a brutal hike out, and I would agree with you. I think we all, if we're honest, like I definitely make those. Even just bow hunting around PA, like even when I'm trying to fill doe tags, right? If I'm hunting somewhere and it's like an area where I'm like, I'm hunting this area because I think there's a decent buck in the area or whatever, and I have some doe tags to fill. And let's say it's early October, and a doe walks within 10 yards of me. I'm calculating the miles back. You know what I mean? I'm going, man, it's a 2-mile hike back. Yeah, I'm not pulling a trigger on a doe 2 miles back. Just call me whatever you want to call me. You know what I mean? Fair weather hunter or whatever. It's like, I'm just, I ain't doing it, So yeah, man, I think that's an appropriate kind of approach to take. So what's your prep been looking like, man? Like, I know you mentioned you've been rucking a lot. Like, is there anything you're doing different this year to get ready to go? Cause I see you and like all of our buddies posting these pictures of your workouts, and y'all are getting yoked up and ready to go chase elk.
Yeah, I've dialed back like the resistance training with weights. I mean, I haven't touched a weight in months, and really just focused on cardio essentially. So I'm running every single day or rucking every single day. But the thing is like, you can train for this all that you want.
Yeah.
And like, your legs are still going to burn after the first quarter mile. Your lungs, you're still going to be short of breath. And like, you could take a break after a mile and you stop for 30 seconds and you catch your breath, you take 5 more steps and your legs are still going to burn. So like, to me, having trained for it, having done it, having not trained for it and done it, like, it's more mental than anything. It's just like, you have to keep going, because if you take a break every time you get tired or get winded or your legs start burning, if you stop every time one of those things happen, you're never going to get anywhere. So like, it's just a mentality of like, elk hunting's hard. Sometimes it sucks, and like, you better learn to suffer well.
Yeah, dude, that's such a good point. Like, I've talked to Tony Peterson about this. He and I have talked about this a couple different times, where it's like, again, we romanticize the hunts, whether it's whitetails, elk, whatever, turkeys, whatever it is. There's parts of the hunts that suck. You know what I mean? Like, there's no way around it. But you like the end result, right? Of either whether a tag's filled or not. Like, the end result can be the experience, the buddies in camp, filling a tag, or whatever the case is, right? Like, that end result is worth it. But there are parts of this that just suck ass, and there's no other way to say it, right? Like, I remember last year going to on my Idaho trip. Like, it was a great trip. We had a great time. We saw some elk. We were in elk most days. Didn't see a lot of them, but the worst part of that trip was the hike in. Like, it was just because we hiked in, spike camped, and that hike was like a lot of climbing. It was basically 2 hours of climbing is what it was, with a 75-pound pack. And there's no way to cut it. That's not fun. You know what I mean? Like, any way you look at it, even if you like hiking, like, I can't say anyone who even likes hiking would say like, yeah, for fun, I like to throw 70 pounds on my back and hike up vertical terrain, in the 85 degree heat, you know what I mean, for 2 hours, 2.5 hours, whatever it is, It's like, yeah, no, that's terrible, but the rest of the trip was killer. So you do that. You make the sacrifice. You suffer well, like you said, because the thing that you want, the prize at the end of the rainbow, is worth the effort.
100%.
you know. So are you feeling like you're in good shape, like you're primo, like you're ready to go?
Yeah, I'm ready to go, man.
Yeah.
Bows getting dialed in. I shot some distance yesterday morning, and could have shot better. But like I think we as archers, we all have those days, right? So now I'm getting to the point now in August where I'll get away from shooting groups, and it's all about making one shot count. Yeah, you're making one shot count, and you're doing it out of awkward stances. You know, you're not flat-footed, standing 90 degrees, perfect posture. You're shooting from your knees, behind bushes, contorting your body a little bit. You know, so now that I'm about 30 days out, we'll say 5 weeks, I guess. We're about 5 weeks out. I'll start focusing on those types of shots, versus, you know, shooting 60 arrows a day. Like I'm past that in my shooting regimen. Yeah.
Right. How many arrows were you shooting just in general? Like when you start kind of like dialing in your shooting, like what does that look like for you?
It's not
because my approach now has changed. My approach has changed a lot just due to like shoulder injury and stuff like that. Like I just can't shoot the number of arrows that I used to be able to shoot, you know, so I've had to dial that way back to where it's like, even like a heavy session for me now might be that I've shot like 10 or 12 arrows in that one session. Like that's a lot for me.
I'm shooting more than that, but it's also the last 3 years, I'll say, I've had to set up new rigs. So new bows, trying to learn that bow, trying to learn the field of that bow. And this year it was a complete overhaul where new sight, new rest, like new bow, new everything essentially, except for my release and my arrow setup. But you know, I'm not shooting every day. I would say through July, I shot 3 to 4 times a week, and I was trying to shoot maybe 40 arrows. So I'll shoot 4 arrow groups, and so that's like 10 sessions at different distances.
Right. What distances are you shooting at typically?
Anywhere from, you know, 20 yards all the way out to 100 yards, 110.
Oh, really? Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Are you just doing that at your house?
Yeah, just in the backyard, man. Yep.
Nice.
Yep.
So you mentioned you changed your setup. So I'm curious, like what, you know, I bought a ton of gear last year because it'd been years since I'd been out to Montana. And so I kind of got like, you know, we're similar in this way where it was like buy once, cry once, you know what I mean? Where I was like, I'm doing this hunt. I'm going to get whatever it is that I need, the things that are going to work for me, you know, the things I'm going to use for like, in the next 10 years or whatever the case is. Some stuff might need to get replaced, but I'm going to buy quality stuff. That way I'm not replacing it every other year, you know, and went through that last year. And I feel pretty good about like the kit I have now. Like, I don't think I really would need to add much, or there wasn't much that I used that I was like, man, I wish this was different or whatever the case was. So for you, like, was there any like gear additions or any changes to your gear based on like previous hunts where you learned something and you were like, I need to swap this out. This isn't working for me.
Yeah. That was my day pack. For the last handful of years, I've ran a QU 1850, and the bag, it's a decent pack. I don't really necessarily have anything terrible to say about it, other than it was like just a tad bit too small. Like by the time I carried my water, and I always carry a med kit, like, you know, a tourniquet, quick clot, you know, small things you might need. So you have the med kit with my water and your food, and then there's days like you need to carry a tripod and glass. In the bag, I just felt like it was always at close to capacity. So I bumped up and went to a 2200 cubic inch bag. So just a little bit bigger. But other than that, no. I added a new pair of boots just because the boots I had were just plumb wore out. But
right.
Yeah.
Nice. What bag did you get? Was it another QU? You just used the same frame or something?
Yeah. So again, if I could go back and start completely over, I probably would have went the EXO route. I think you ended up with an EXO, right?
Yep. Yeah. I forget what the cubic inch was on that one. I think it was the 4500, but yeah. And I ended up just using that as like my day pack too while I was out there, just empty, you know, because you can smash it down pretty well. Like it's got enough straps and stuff on it to where you can kind of get it pretty far squeezed down. And there wasn't much that I took in my day kit. It was like you said, it was like a little bit of food, which I could literally fit in my lid, you know, essentially. And then I use the hydration bladder for that one, for my water. And then it was so hot while I was out there, like there was no need to take any extra clothes or, there was no possibility of rain while I was out there in the forecast. So I didn't take any of that stuff with me. Maybe take a jacket because it'd be like cool still in the morning, and then I would stuff that in there. And then I always carried like a med kit too. But yeah, the EXO is nice, man. Like I really like it. I got the meat hauler with it, which just kind of folds in behind the pack itself. And that way when you kill, you already have your meat hauler in there and you're not just, you can use your bag as your meat hauler, but like having that meat hauler in there or the webbing in there just makes it so much nicer because it just kind of secures everything to the frame really, really well.
Yeah. The KUIU system is kind of modular. You can change the suspension and the frame and different size bags. So it was cheaper for me just to buy a new bag for $150 or whatever it was versus, making the $800 purchase and getting a new day bag, a bigger bag. Cause we do still end up in the backcountry. Like we just do it after we find the animals and we go in for 3, 4, 5 days at a time versus, taking all that stuff in. So, but outside of that, no, that was the only significant change on the gear side.
Nice, man. Well, dude, I hope you kill a big one this year out there. I'll be excited to get. Dude, the call I got last year was a little concerning. Like I thought something bad happened. I was like, hey, dude, you need to chill out. You need to calm down, man. Tell me what's going on. I thought I might have to make a flight out there, to try to come recover my boy. What date? When are you actually leaving, and how long are you going to be there?
We're leaving somewhere between the 5th and the 9th. That's the window that we said, hey, we're going to leave somewhere between the 5th and the 9th of September. And, with 4 of us, we're going to stay till we all kill or the season ends. So nice. Essentially we have 3 weeks.
3 weeks. Nice, man. That's awesome, dude. Yeah, that's going to be a blast, and I'm a little upset I'm not going to be there, but next year. All right, we're going to transition now to whitetails. We've done some elk talking, plans for that. Now we're going to transition to our home states first. We'll talk PA and Ohio. So my elk plans is I don't have any this year. That's the update there. And then, and I'm not happy about it if you couldn't tell. So let's start with you, man. Ohio. What do you got going on for Ohio? Any intel? Like, what's the scouting been looking like? What's the glassing report look like?
Scouting has been a little hit and miss, to be honest, and basically that's revolving around the weather because a lot of what I'm doing this year is right outside my back door. So it's a lot of swamps, a lot of low-lying sloughs and that type of habitat. And we've had a really wet winter, and I couldn't get hardly into anything. So I spent a lot of time turkey hunting through the spring when the water levels dropped. But then, the foliage, the spring green up, I didn't see a bunch, even though I spent quite a bit of time in and around some of these areas. Didn't feel great about what I collected through the spring. Turned summer, and we're right back in the same damn position, man. Like these thunderstorms and rain events that we're getting, seems like once a week we get a big storm. The water table is up 7 feet. I have cameras that are just barely above water in some of these swamps, and I'm getting pictures of good deer. The deer numbers are actually better than what I anticipated. And I don't have anything really, really big, but indicative for the area, a nice representation of Northeast Ohio. But the boots on the ground scouting has really suffered. So I've had to rely more on glassing. And every single evening, not every single evening, I would say 5 nights a week, I've been out pounding pavement, glassing. And that has proven to pay off as far as target acquisition. But a lot of the stuff that I'm glassing is private. Now it's about, do I think the deer is going to stay there? Because I have no previous history with any of these parcels. Contacting landowners, trying to do some due diligence on that end, trying to understand if they hunt or if their family hunts or what's the likelihood or the odds of me even getting permission on some of these pieces. So the glassing thing has been a nice added wrinkle, and it's been a lot of fun because I get to do it with the kids, and we've been doing a lot. It's fairly easy to do, but I'm just not sure how it's going to impact my fall as of right now where I stand.
Right. Have you gotten any permission on any of those pieces?
Yeah.
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 Oh, nice, man. That's got to feel pretty good.
It does. It's just, for so many years I've hunted parcels that I've had previous history with. This year it's kind of a little bit of a different situation. And then, relatively speaking, I'm new to the area because we've only lived there for, less than a year. So now it's like I'm trying to go back and look at crop rotation, looking at, old sign on the pieces I do have access to. So while I'm still scouting, it's different than years past. Like I kind of feel a little bit behind the eight ball, but also knowing that there's added opportunity, knowing that it's out my back door, right? So I'm not driving 4 hours to go hunt a specific piece. So it's more timely, and I think that's going to honestly pay dividends come whitetail season.
Right. So I'm curious to ask you this question because I'm in a similar boat, right? Like where my spring scouting got real jacked, where it's like I had some weather stuff early, especially on the north piece, where it just like it stayed frozen for a long time, and then like, it started getting a ton of rain and like all the stuff that you just kind of mentioned. I had some family obligations in the spring as well that I just couldn't get out and stuff like that. And then we transitioned to summer, and it's been similar to where it's like, rain whenever I could get out, so I wasn't able to get out. And just to be honest, it's like I just don't like scouting during the summer if I can avoid it. It's like I got out, got my trail cameras out, did the scouting I needed to do probably like late May, early June, kind of tried to wrap things up, but didn't get nearly as much done as I needed to get done. Again, just had some obligations and stuff that I had to take care of and just didn't allow me to get out. But I almost feel like, and I was talking to some buddies about this, where I almost feel like this might be a blessing in disguise to where it forces me to kind of not go on the fly, because I know some about these properties, you know what I mean? Or I've hunted them for a couple years, so I don't need to like dive way in. I just don't have any new spots that I found for this year. But it almost makes me like I almost have a sense of like heightened excitement because I feel like they're a little bit newer to me now. Like now I'm interested to see what's going on in these areas, as opposed to like thinking I already have all the answers. And so is there any of that for you to where it's like, yeah, you might be behind the eight ball a little bit, man, but like everything's going to be fresh, brand new for you?
Yeah. And I think that comes from being in love or enjoying the process, not just the end result. So like,
right.
It's almost, I don't want to say it's an added challenge, because like you battle these things, maybe not every year, but every so often you do. But just enjoying the process and knowing that you're going to be forcing yourself to go through those processes, and being able to look at things with a critical mindset, I think is, the most important thing, not shoeboxing things into maybe past experiences. I think it's okay to reference past experiences and things that you've learned. I think that's the only way to grow as a whitetail hunter. But sometimes, to your point, it is a sense of there is a sense of excitement when you're trying to figure something out new. And I don't know if that comes from just something being new and fresh, or if it's about testing yourself and testing your knowledge of whitetails, testing yourself as a hunter, testing yourself as a woodsman. But I definitely feel the level of excitement increased over years past.
Yeah. For me, it's almost like a freeing feeling, where it's like I don't feel chained or constrained by previous knowledge, even though I know like some of these areas. But because I didn't get to go in and dissect it the way I usually would in the off season, and kind of look for new spots and stuff like that, where I almost feel like I have a get out of jail free card to kind of like just kind of let it rip, if you will. You know what I mean? It's like it'd be like playing football or whatever, where it's like you're so caught in your head as a linebacker making your reads that you're not using like your abilities just to go make the play. You know what I mean? Same thing. Or in golf, where it's like you get in your head and you're so worried about like, oh, is my grip right? Is my stance right? Is this right? Is that right? And like, and then you're shanking everything. But like when you just walk up, grip it and rip it, and you're just doing what you do, it works out. You know what I mean? And so I almost feel like this season for me, especially locally, is a grip it and rip it type of season for me. And I think the North piece is that way for me too, just because I'm still pretty new to it, and I'm actually kind of transitioning to a new section of that piece, and I'm going to spend a little bit more time there, where it is all going to be brand new to me as far as like hunting goes, to where it's like I just feel like I'm just going to let shooter going to shoot. You know what I mean? Like that's what I'm going to do. It's like I'm going to barrel into places even if I don't have the exact right wind. Not going to blow places out, but I'm going to take some risks. I'm going to take some chances with the end goal being like, I want to kill something, but the background end goal is like, I need to learn some stuff about this place. And the only way I'm going to do that is I got to go in and, you know, muck it up if I have to, you know what I mean? And then that'll be a learning experience. Like, hey, I hunted this spot completely wrong. The only way I'm going to know that is to go hunt it, you know?
That's right.
Because I felt like last year I tiptoed around and didn't get to hunt some of the spots I wanted to hunt because I just wasn't getting the right wind that I felt real comfortable with. Where in reality was I probably had winds that I could have worked, would have been a risk, but at least I would know then. And now I feel like I'm a year behind on that knowledge, you know, because I didn't take those risks.
Yeah.
So are you feeling kind of the same way? Some of this is going to be grip it and rip it this year?
Oh, for sure. There will be.
Yeah.
There'll be a lot of morning hunts in October. Just because, like, again, being outside my back door, I have a few hours every morning before I need to be at the office. So, like, I'm going to take those opportunities and just make the most of them. You know, that's just the way it's going to pan out.
So with your glassing, have you like run across a couple targets, or you know, how do you feel about that? You said you have some representative animals, but is there anything that's really kind of attracted your attention?
You know me too well. I've laid eyes on one big deer. And a handful of weeks ago, I glassed them up with a bachelor group of bucks, and the deer have been a little more jumpy than I had anticipated. Like, I mean,
wow.
But this one particular buck is on the upper end of age structure and like big frame deer. And so my daily driving kind of circle that we do with the kids has included him, and I failed to lay eyes on him confirmed since that original sighting. Now, I've seen the bucks that he's been with, or that I spot him with that first night, and on one evening, the younger bucks were across the road in the bean field, and I saw one lone buck kind of across the road that I felt like was him, but he was 1,000+ yards away, man. Like, a very long distance away, and he was already working back into the timber. So I didn't get a good look at him, but I kind of have a feeling lone deer by himself.
Him. You're right.
And and even at 1,000, 1,200 yards away, I could still see frame. Whether it was, so I have to assume that it was the deer that I laid eyes on. But outside of him, no. Most of the stuff that I'm looking at is between 115 and 140 inches for the most part. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, for me, I have one good one that I know of around locally that I would be stoked to kill. And we'll see if he sticks around. He's in the right spot, though. He's in an area that I really like, and has historically been good to me. So I'm stoked on that. I've been doing some driving and glass in the past like 2 weekends and got out. Unfortunately, locally there's not a lot of there's zero ag fields that are, well, not typically. There are zero ag fields that are adjacent to anything that I hunt locally. The best I can do is like maybe it's like a half mile to a mile away from the public, or from a corner of public or something like that, to where, if there's a good buck there, like they could be. And that's what happened a couple of years ago. I glassed one in a field. He was like roughly a mile away from the public. The way the land laid out, I figured doe bedding would probably be like in the small little like pockets of timber that were in like around some of these houses, that were like, when I see these houses, like they might have like 5 acres or 7 acres. And so there'd be like a little block of timber. I figured like does would probably like take those up, and that if I were a buck, I'd probably bed in the corner of of the closest public, because it's larger and you could get away from like the doe family groups and stuff like that. And that's what turned out to happen. Like opening day, I went and I bumped that big deer out of his bed, and that was all she wrote. Because my opener is like the middle of September this year. The 16th is, I think, when we open. So I've been kind of driving now. All those fields this year are corn, like, so there's no like glassing really, except I found 2 like small fields in this one particular area that do have beans, and I've been driving that, kind of checking it. I've not seen any bucks in either of those fields, but to be fair, it's like I've only kind of like driven it twice. And Saturday night I was out, and there was a pile of deer out, just didn't see any bucks in either of those fields. So I'm hopeful that'll, and this is actually an area that I turkey hunted in the past. And so, and it's not adjacent to the public, but it's close. And so I kind of know the area a little bit. And the access to this area is pretty slick too. So I'm kind of stoked on that spot. And there's usually always like one good deer in this area that's like abnormally good. And so I'm kind of have my fingers crossed. That's probably going to be where I start off the early season. Like if I don't know anything else, I don't have anything else kind of like figured out, that'll be where I start the early season. If nothing else, going to try to kill some does, bed to food, or, kind of get lucky, and find a glass up a good deer maybe in the next like couple weeks and, go in and make a play on him in that particular spot. The north piece, I got really good targets that I'm stoked on. And so we'll just kind of see how that plays out. There's a old warrior that's back from years past. Watched him for 3 years. So hopefully this year we get a play at him. Then there's another one who I can't tell if he's new or old. I'll have to send you the video. But he's a hammer, and I'm stoked on that. And then there's a bunch of cameras that I haven't even checked, so I have no clue like what those might hold. And I'm waiting for that like August 20th, August 22nd kind of date to go check that you and I talked about, to just try to get any of that inventory of like any of those random bucks that pass through, to kind of check out where their haunts might be in the fall that you don't see all summer long. Yep. So I'm kind of holding out, being patient, waiting for that kind of time frame to come. Then I'll go kind of make a run through and see what we got. But that's I think that's what I have going on. Go ahead.
When does that season open up north? Is it later, or is it?
Yeah, it's I don't know what the exact date is. It's whatever that first Saturday. It's either the first Saturday of October or the last Saturday of September. It just depends on how the dates fall. I think this year it might be September 30th. That rings a bell. So it's an October opener, essentially. If you want to look at it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I'm battling here around home too. Like we don't open until I think it's the 27th of September. Mm-hmm. It's the same situation. I don't know the exact date, but later part of September. Things have changed so much from August to, the end of September. It's like, man, scouting acorns now, locating acorn trees, soft mash trees. Like those are some of the things that I've done the last couple months, just driving, paying attention to, fence rows. Like there's apple trees in this fence row, or this ditch is carrying, red oaks or white oaks or whatever the case is. That's right. So on top of just glass and deer, like I'm looking at fall food sources too, knowing that, most of the beans are going to be brown or off the fields by the time my season rolls around.
Yeah, at least that local piece, it's like I might have a very, it's not going to be much of a play, right? Because even at that point, September 16th, like they're usually turning at that point. Or you might have a corner that's in the shade that's holding extra moisture that might stay green an extra week or whatever, right? So that might be in play. I think the good news though is, at least for me locally, it was like last year was rough, just like outside of one area, but I had zero. And this I think was like the case for a lot of guys that I talked to, just like zero acorns anywhere. Like it just like was not finding them anywhere. And this year it seems like the acorn crop is going to be good, at least from what I've heard from some buddies of mine who've been out kind of looking. And then even just like, if you look at the trees that you see when you're driving around, not even in the timber, but just see like that they're holding, it seems like, and I was just talking to my dad too, cause he's been out on his property kind of walking around. And he just said like, he's just packed full of acorns. Like pretty much every white oak he has is holding. And so I'm like, all right, it's a good chance that, some of those prime areas that I had kind of earmarked the year prior because of the food are going to hopefully kind of be in play again this year. And I'll make that check, of course, when I go out in August and do all my kind of scoping. The bummer is in that north piece, I mean, you were there. It's like good luck finding a white oak tree, in that area. There's just not. I know where there's a bunch of them. That's where a lot of guys like to hunt. It gets pounded. And there's also so many acorns in there. It's like being on roller skates. So it's like, deer could be eaten anywhere, You want that place where you can kind of isolate them. Just so happens to be that there's not a ton of white oaks in these particular areas where I'm finding these deer, which is great because, they're in these like little pockets of abundance, you know what I mean? Where it's like they got the food, they've got some browse, they've got cover. So, the old adage of big deer have wet feet, that's going to be kind of, I think, probably my mantra for this year.
Have you found those acorns to deplete too fast because of bears up there at all? Like, are bears coming over and wiping those out before you can kind of target those areas?
Not that I've noticed. I've struggled just to even find like white oak trees, just white oaks in general. You know what I mean? Like you'll find a red oak here and there, and of course in areas like that, like just as well as anybody, like in the big woods areas where when food is scarce, red oaks, if there's not white oaks, like that becomes a thing, and so I do know where a couple of those are at. But the big thing up there is actually beech nuts. They eat the shit out of those. And I found that out from a local, because I'd been walking right past them, and I was like, what the hell are these deer eating? I was like, I'm seeing like with big bellies and they're mountain deer. I was like, they're not eating in an ag field because there's nothing close by, and I was talking to this fella that lives in that area, and he's like, he sent me a picture of him holding them. I'm like, you holding beech nuts? He's like, yeah. He's like, deer eat the shit out of these. And I'm like, well, I know that where there's a bunch of those. Like, I was like, I've been walking past them for 2 years. You know what I mean? Like, so, that might be the key to unlocking success up there. We'll see. But what's your goal for this year for local? What's your what are you trying to get done?
A 130. It's probably been 10 years since I killed a deer in this county. I killed a buck in this county.
Right.
A couple of years ago, after we got back from Kansas, I had an 8-point that I wanted to get killed, and I went in, hunted him twice, boogered him up, and I saw him on a hoof, just never had a shot opportunity at him. He was a little too far. But it's been a long time since I killed a buck in Trumbull County, so it's my goal is 130 for the year. So there's plenty of them around.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I think my goal for PA is either locally there's a really good, he's either going to be an 8-point or a 9-point. I couldn't quite tell whenever I got the original picture of him. And he's an area where he should be killable, as long as he doesn't transition. But what I've found in this particular area is like the more mature deer that I find during the summer, he's usually the one that sticks around. Like it's all the other deer that kind of disperse. And there's a reason for that. It's like a really prime kind of area. And so I feel like that the mature deer in that area doesn't want to move because he's got everything he wants right there. So it's either right now he's the only target locally. So that could change like once I pull cameras in August. And then up north, I don't care if I know the deer, don't know the deer. I just want to kill like a good mountain buck. I don't really have a score. It's like when I see it and I get excited, that's the one I'm going to shoot. Now, there are like 3 that I know of that 4 that I know of that would make anybody happy for the most part, and 1 would make people really happy even in like Iowa. You know what I mean? So it's I would love to run into one of those, but I'm not holding out for that. And then aside from that, man, it's like I got Kansas coming back up.
Let's talk about Kansas, brother.
Oh, dude, it's like the itch I just can't seem to scratch. You know what I mean? It's this year is going to be I'm going to do it a little bit different. I'm going to start off where I hunted for the week last year, and that general area. I didn't hunt one spot, as anyone who's hunted Kansas knows. Like, you typically don't hunt like a piece, unless like you're on a lease and you have like a bunch of ground, that you have access to or whatever. You're usually having to jump around, especially the way you and I do it on Weehaw and stuff, where they're block parcels, and so you're just going, you're glassing, checking, and you're moving. But there was one area where you and I saw a lot of deer the year prior, and so I went back there. And I basically just hunted that, and like all the weehaw that was around it was like my plan. And I was out there just for a week, and so I knew where there were deer. And the old adage, like we were talking about with elk, like don't leave elk to find elk. I didn't leave deer to find deer. I knew that there were deer there. I glassed a really good one the second day. I stayed in the general area that way. If I ended up seeing him again, I could make a play on him. I didn't want to be like spending a bunch of time too far away, where if he popped up that I missed him. And had a couple opportunities this year. I think the goal is, or the plan is to, I'm going to camp at a different spot. I'm going to be a little further south, and a little further probably east, in this particular zone, because it's more centrally located. I can get to the places where I hunted last year, but there's a bunch of like new weehaw, because if anyone's ever hunted out there, it's like the weehaw doesn't stay the same every year. Like people's contracts run out, and so they may not re-enroll. New pieces enroll into the program, and so you kind of have constantly like a shifting kind of, landscape of different pieces that you can hunt. And I have a little bit of intel about these ones that are a little further south. My buddy Wilson's been out there and has turkey hunted out there and has seen hammer deer sign. And he's had some buddies who have actually gone out there and deer hunted areas that they've turkey hunted and killed a couple giants, and have had really good luck historically in some of these general areas. And it's all in the zone that you and I were, the one zone that you and I were in. And so that's kind of the plan. And then if shit is just not going well, I'll actually not be too far away from the adjacent zone that I could actually jump over there too if I wanted to like drive some of the weehaw that was over there and just take a day and be like, all right, I'm going to do nothing but drive and see if I just can't glass a good one. And then if I've glassed one, then that's going to be where I'm going to hunt until I figure out either I kill it or I booger it up or I just exhaust my opportunities and then figure out the rest of the plan from there. So that's kind of the plan this year. But I'll start where I was at last year because I know it. I understand it. I'm going to be out there that like the 5th and 6th, the day that Jared kind of told us like that if you're going to be there, like don't miss this day, and it held true last year. I think I saw 30 deer on the 6th last year.
Dang.
Yeah, it was bananas, dude. And they were all within bow range. It's like it was just everything was close. I don't know that I'll see 30 deer again this year, but it's just that's the day where for whatever reason they're on the move and it's held true. 2 years running, and so I'll start there because I know how to hunt it and I can just get in and hunt it right away and see if I can't make something happen. And then if not, I'll probably just spend 2 days there. And then from there, I'll probably move on. I might come back, especially if I see something the first day or two. I might come back whenever he comes, when a good deer comes off a doe to see if I can't make another play. But I won't spend, a week hunting everything that's around that. I'll probably move on to like some other areas that are new and take a swing at that. But that's the plan for that setup. So a little bit different. Probably going back to more what you and I did the first year.
Right. Did you notice any drastic change in crop rotation from the first year to the second year? Or are you anticipating that change? And I guess if you did see that change last year, are you anticipating something similar to what we saw the first time we went out?
I didn't see a big changing crop rotation, and to be honest, maybe I'm just naive, but like, I don't know that it would be that big of a difference because what it mostly was all corn and milo. Right. And so it's all standing to a degree. Right. And I mean, I know that corn is different than milo. I'm assuming the deer, they're equal in terms of like desirability to eat or palatability, is what I would kind of assume. Maybe I'm wrong, but they can all get hidden in that stuff and they all use it as bedding. Right. And so for me, it's less about, well, what is the crop? It's more about like, is it cut or not cut? You know what I mean? Like that's for me is what it kind of comes down to. And you and I found that out. It's like, I'd try not to spend much time around areas that have a bunch of standing corn or milo. Milo, not so bad because you can still kind of catch them. But corn definitely is like, at least for me, is like a no-fly zone because I can spend days there and not see anything, And so I try to go, use that same strategy you and I used at the end of that first trip, which was try to find areas that are blocks of timber or even if it's CRP, places where deer can get hidden, that is all kind of surrounded by cut crops, that way I'm not battling. I know where they kind of have to be and I can focus my time on, glassing those areas and stuff like that. So that's kind of my plan for this year.
Yeah. I'm excited, man. I wish I was going.
I know, man.
I'm excited for you though.
Yeah. And I don't have any like, delusions of grandeur. There's no grand kind of like goal or whatever, it's like, I'll kill the first good deer that I see, because I'm just trying to get that monkey off my back this year. It's like I want to kill a deer from the ground out there, and I'll probably be a little bit more aggressive this year. I kind of learned last year how to, I shouldn't say I learned because I'm not an expert at it, but I learned better as to how to be aggressive, when to be aggressive, during last year's hunt and when to be patient. Like I think you and I talked about it one time and I called it patient aggressive, like aggressive patience. Cause like when it's time to go, you got to go, but you got to know, you got to kind of hold the horses back a little bit, you know what I mean? And wait for that opportunity. But whenever it comes, like you got to be ready to execute on it because it's going to be a brief moment,
That's right.
And that's the part I was picking up on last year. That I was made a lot better plays on deer last year was with that approach. And I think this year I plan to use decoying more than I did last year.
That was my next question.
Yeah. I didn't really use it much last year. And the reason was because like because I was on limited time and I knew kind of what deer were doing in a particular area, I was definitely doing more ambush hunting in these spots, like off the ground, than I was like true spotting and stalking. This year though, because I plan to do a lot more driving in some new areas that are unknown to me, like the decoy is definitely going to be in play. So I'm going to make some adjustments to my decoy. I'm going to kind of use it how I had Travis Glassman on, big decoy guy, like kills great deer out in the plains. He's really good at decoying. Like he decoys a lot. And so I need to get like, that, I don't know what that shit's made out of, but it's almost like a electric fence post that's like fiberglass or whatever, like the white fence posts or whatever. I want to get some of that to kind of put my decoy on. That way it's super light and I can just stake in the ground. You can just kind of stick it anywhere. You know what I mean? And I'm not trying to find like a tree or a branch or something to clamp on or whatever. I can just kind of stick it and be good to go. Because I'm using just a heads up decoy. And I thought about making something like what you made. And I was like, man, if I do that, it's like it's bigger and I don't know that I'll carry it every time. I was like, but that heads up decoy is nothing. And I was like, I'll carry that every hunt, So that's kind of the plan.
Yeah, if I could go back, I mean, having that bigger decoy, that the shield decoy or whatever, is cool to have in the truck, but it's not something, in hindsight, like it's too big, it's too heavy, it's too cumbersome to tote with you all the time. Like certain scenarios, yes, but to your point, having something that's packable, like that heads up decoy on a stake, probably makes a hell of a lot more sense.
Yeah, and I know Chancey and those guys carry. There's a lot with them, and they have great success with it. I just know me, and if it's cumbersome and annoying, I won't do it, And so for me, it's got to be something that just fits into what I'm already doing. And if it does that, then it'll go with me on every hunt. If it doesn't, it'll end up laying in the truck for 2 weeks. Is what'll happen. So, but yeah, that's my plan, man. Hopefully we fill a tag this year. I'll be there, planned for 2 weeks if I have to be. The goal is to try to get something done early and maybe swing through Ohio or come visit you, pay you a visit, maybe go to the hellhole for like a couple days, like on a whim, maybe that's the way to do it, man. Maybe not scouting it and just showing up like, on a flyer. It might be the way to do it.
It seems to work for some guys.
Right. Well, cool, man. Well, I'm going to let you get out of here, let you get back to work. Before you get out of here, let folks know everything that Exodus has going on, because you guys have had a bunch of new stuff kind of happen, over the past couple months with the launch of new arrows and stuff like that. So just let folks know where they can check that out and anything you guys have going on.
Yeah, we're just right now wrapping up Velvet Fest. We're the tail end of that. There's some, I think it's 15% site-wide savings with some weekly deals, so be plugged into the newsletter because there are some good ones popping out on those exclusive deals. But, new products dropping. The new NIS arrow's doing pretty darn well. We're really, really happy with that. We have some camera stuff happening just here in a couple months. So, but anyways, people want to know more about Exodus or what we have going on. It's just Exodus outdoor gear pretty much across all mediums.
Awesome, brother. Well, I appreciate you, man, and good luck in Idaho. I know we'll talk before that, but I'm stoked for you. A little bummed I'm not going, but we'll talk about that another day.
You'll get another call.
Right.
Maybe
nice.
It might not be in underwear. I just killed in my underwear. It's rated 8 miles deep.
Yeah, dude, it's got to be an underwear collar. I don't want it. All right, brother, man, I appreciate you.
All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening, and if you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast. And while you're at it, head over to YouTube and give us a sub there as well. I'd be super appreciative if you do those couple things for me. And before I shut this thing down, we need to give a big shout out to our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible. Tethered, Exodus Outdoor Gear, and Genesee Beer. And until next time, we'll see y'all.